Welcome to today's game. We're looking at a game from the 2022 Tata Steel tournament where Sam Shankland, playing with the white pieces, was playing against Sergey Karjakin. And Karjakin had quite a good tournament. He ended up with a performance rating of over 2760. Sam, this was a bit of a disappointing tournament for him. He had 1 win and 3 losses, came home with 5.5 points. But in this game, we see Shankland's only win of the tournament by playing d4. He's got a wonderful d4 repertoire on chessable, but we see he plays d4 here, and Karjakin responds with knight f6, and we're going to see a very interesting game, a game without any brilliant moves, a game without any blunders, but complete and utter positional understanding and activity over pieces by Shankland later in the game. But it's interesting because this game starts off with a lot of pawn pushes. We get c4, then we get e6, knight c3, bishop to b4, f3, c5, then we get d5, b5, e4, and d6. So, getting a very cramped position in terms of the pawn pushes. And then we get bishop to d2, unpinning the knight. Then we get a6, we get a4, we get pawn takes on c4. Then we get bishop takes, knight to d7, d takes e6, and then bishop takes e6. So things open up a little bit more. But yeah, very intriguing position. Then Karjakin decides to go knight to e5. Of course, knight to e5 is threatening possibly jumping into this spot, winning this pawn, but certainly coming in with a check. So Shankland decides to go bishop to c8, and then after queen takes back on c8, we get bishop to f4, opening up this spot here, meaning that it is no longer good for Karjakin to jump. Then we get c4, bishop takes on e5, and pawn takes on e5. Then we get knight to h3, which is an inaccuracy because it allows Karjakin to go bishop to c5, and bishop to c5, of course, stopping Shankland from being able to castle. So he goes queen to e2, and then after rook to b8, we get knight to f2, allowing him to now castle. And then Karjakin decides, well, let's go queen to b7 and attack the b2 pawn. So what do you play here? We've got the queen defending it, but one defender versus two attacking. So there's a pawn is hanging in a very high class classical tournament such as Tata Steel. You do not want to be hanging pawns for free against such quality players. So what does Shankland do to defend this pawn? What would you do? Do you think bishop, or rather rook to b1 is the best move? Is that what would you say? Well, Shankland completely disagrees with you because he went to castle, hanging this pawn. So is it hanging? What's the idea here? So Karjakin takes, and then we get queen to takes on c4. White is still up a pawn, however, and even better, when bishop takes f2, has Shankland made a dreadful blunder in this game, because Shankland can't take the bishop because it hangs the rook in the corner. So now Shankland has given up a pawn, taken a pawn back, but he's lost a piece. So has Shankland just completely lost his mind in one of the biggest tournaments that he's ever played? Well, no. So he goes king to h1, and then Karjakin decides to go to b3, trying to trade off the queens. He knows if he can trade off the queens, he's going to be in a very healthy position. But Shankland decides to go to c7. Again, Karjakin tries to trade off the queens, but this time Shankland takes on e5 with check. Then we get king f7. Now what would you do? You still can't take the bishop because the queen would just capture. So what would you play here? Well, he plays knight to d5, attacking the queen, and basically offering up a trade of the knights. So you think, well, what are you doing? You're down a piece. Why are you trading off pieces? So Karjakin takes, but that allows Shankland to take back with check. Then we get king to e7, queen to e5 check, king to f7, and here we get the really wonderful move by Shankland, rook to c1, and with that Karjakin actually resigns. You still can't take this bishop, but the threat here of course is playing rook to c7. So you think, well, what's such a big deal about this move? Can't I just play something like this? Well, if you played rook to b7, that allows queen to d5 check, king to e7. Then we get the beautiful rook to c6. So we try and trade off the queens this way, but instead you can just play the beautiful move rook to c7 check, and of course you have to take and you lose your queen. There's lots of different ways that this game could have continued. So after rook to c1, you could have played something like this, check, check, win the queen that way. Lots of different ways. You could have played queen to f6, which is queen to h5 check. Then after taking back the bishop, white is still in a beautiful winning position, up 2 pawns. You ain't going to lose this in a classical game. And you've got a check also coming. Lots of different ways, but Shankland really showed beautiful understanding in this game to show that sometimes you can sack a piece for activity, and Karjakin resigned after 26 move, which was really wonderful victory for Shankland in this game.